Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my creative process. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, designer, and your pal, and I'm excited and appreciative to have you back for another episode. Number 177, inching steadily closer to that 200 mark. Question of the week this week is, do you prefer to see quality or quantity from an artist, from an artist's? Little typo there. So this is sort of an interesting thing that I've been mulling over lately. A lot of my favorite artists either put out a ton of work consistently, all of which I feel like maybe didn't take them a super long time to develop. And then there's other artists who only put out stuff, occasionally a handful of times a year, and it's like of a really high caliber and a really high polish. And there's two sort of trains of thought about that, especially in sort of the Instagram era when people just want to have constant content blasted at their eyes, and I don't know if that always produces the best quality work. And I used to try to post just as frequently as possible. Even this show is sort of an attempt to keep up consistency, but I'm not sure if that always creates the highest quality output from each individual piece. So it's sort of an interesting conundrum that I can see being exacerbated by social media, and something that I certainly struggle with. So I'd love to hear your thoughts there, either in terms of artists you enjoy watching or keeping up with, or in terms of your own work. So speaking of work, this week I'm going to be doing something a little bit similar to what I did last week. Last week I had this really sort of streamlined, simplified dog character in this rich, stripy, abstract, textured sort of background. And I want to do something similar to that. But this week I think I'm going to be making like a little fish, a little guppy kind of looking creature. So let's just jump right in. I'm going to get some triangles going on this guy. I'm going to expand them, maybe scale them out a bit. I'm just going to get right into sculpting. I'm going to make my brush a lot bigger. I'm going to turn symmetry on as well. Make sure I have it mapped appropriately. Gives you a little preview on the far side. So let's start making a fish shape. And here's a feature I learned about recently, actually, is just hitting this volume mesh will just sort of uniformly re-subdivide your mesh, which can be pretty useful, actually. So I'm sort of thinking like a guppy or a beta, kind of a simple fish, and I don't want them to be super realistic or super detailed, because I think I'm going to put a handful of them in the composition along with some some of that abstract stuff we were talking about a minute ago. Oops. So I kind of give them a little fishy belly, and then let's go much smaller. See if we can carve out one of those fishy mouths. Here it might be worth hitting that volume mesh again. Now I can click on this little gear here and just kind of turn down the size of the subdivisions. I didn't prepare a sketch this week, but I did look at some fish images right before we hopped on, and I've drawn and modeled a lot of fish. So I feel sort of comfortable handling this without some sketching. That's not necessarily the way I'd recommend working. And I'm rotating around a lot to sort of check the smoothness. I think that's pretty good. Not bad. Magic hands. What's up, Ramel? I don't know if you're talking about me, but if you are, I appreciate it. I definitely want a big, goofy eye for these fish. I feel like that's always a kind of giveaway, fun, like a fun. What's the word I'm looking for? Like when you're doing a caricature and you exaggerate one particular feature. I think that's the eyeball is a good one on a fish to exaggerate. They usually have these big kind of blank stare eyeballs, which are fun to model. Fun and easy. You're welcome, Ramel. Thanks for the kind words and thanks for tuning in. Glad to hear it. All right, so let's get some sort of simple fins going. I think we can use. Let's try to start with a Bezier. Oops. I want to give this a little bit of depth. So a good way to do that quickly is to just throw it on a cloth surface. Turn the subdivisions down, unless you want more subdivisions. Just add a little bit of thickness. Since I made this 4 centimeters thick, I moved it over 2 centimeters so it would stay centered on our little fishy here. I think I'm going to use another Bezier actually. Why don't I just copy this cloth surface? And then, actually, you know what I can do is just reset it by adding grid points. Now, guppies have these big, crazy tail fins. Not bad. Came together pretty quickly. And what's good about these is they have lots of subdivisions, and what I think I'm ultimately going to do is put these inside of a formula, or maybe a wind, but probably a formula effector just to get some nice kind of back and forth wiggling and curving. And that will allow me to actually make a whole bunch of copies of these and then adjust the formula for each of them so they each are the same base mesh but have different curves. And I can apply that individually to each in the most non-destructive way possible, which is always good. Procedurally, I guess you'd call it. Okay, so that's all right. And now I think I'm going to use this cloth surface one more time to make a little fin. So this one should go inside the symmetry object. Get those roughly in position. The one annoying thing about a Bezier surface is if you adjust the amount of points, it will reset the entire thing, which can be a little bit annoying. So make sure you have a decent idea of where you want to be before that happens. Whoops. All right, it's a decent little fish. I'm going to adjust this back fin though here. I think a more rounded fin. Yeah, I think I kind of prefer that. All right. I think that's pretty good. Can always come back and adjust this later. Fish. That's what I'm going to do, like I mentioned before, is grab one of these handy dandy formula effectors. Where'd you go? Where'd you go, formula? There you are. You can see what it adds to the fish. We start getting a wiggle. Not quite what I wanted. I want it to wiggle this direction. And I want it to be a lot more gentle. And you can see it radiates out from this center point, like a ripple. So you can make some adjustments, but I think I want to pull it forward. So we're just getting a nice gentle side to side. And actually what's great about this is that it animates automatically. So if you want to have a swimming fish, actually you might want to do it this way. That dude's kind of swimming, right? We're going to be doing a static graphic this time. So I'm just going to use it to do a little bit of kind of flagging and warping in either direction. We can also do this kind of thing to adjust sort of the curve of the fish in other directions. So I think this is a start. Cool. So now what kind of a composition are we going to do? Now that I've got sort of my base character in place, I want to start creating these moving, organic, abstract forms all around. Let's try that. All right, let's also add a camera. As we're building this composition, I think it'll be useful to have something static in place. And I want to just kind of position a few fishes in a couple of ways. Start building the the sort of foundation of our composition. And see, now using that formula allows us to get some sort of interesting curves on the little fella. Actually, since we're doing so many, now I'm thinking might make sense to do these separately. So check it out. So I'll have a fish, and then I'll create an instance of the fish. And I will warp them individually. Huh. Ah. So now I can texture the fish and they'll all be consistent. Wait, what happened? There we go. So now I've got a guy that's just an instance of this other fish. I can do the same thing, go ahead and reposition him. Maybe I can do the same thing. Whoops. Whoops. All right. I messed up there and I copied the original fish instead of the instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to coordinates. Look if it's just all zeroed out. So I'll grab this dude, just zero it out, and then delete that fish. Boom. Okay, good deal. Let's make a material for the eye. I think it should just be kind of a darker blue color. That's not it. Now in the same way I handled last week's color, I think I'm going to do similar stuff here. In that the characters, the animals, will be sort of a minimal, simplified sort of color palette, and then those will sort of be in juxtaposition of a colorful, rich kind of background. So I want to create a situation where there's enough contrast between the two that they kind of work nicely together. So let's start filling in that abstract background. I might wind up adding more fish. Not positive yet. Let's do this. Let's use their sculpt tools. I'm going to make the pull tool really large. I'm going to turn off symmetry. Whoa. I'm going to set up a volume mesh for that, except I'm going to make the size much larger. I could smooth it a bit. Let's see what that does. Yeah, I like that. Still too high poly though. Whoops, I meant to use the grab tool. Luckily that's already quite large. So we're just kind of getting some stuff in place here yet now. Be a bit of a process to get it, proper. Seems like it's not applying this. That's weird. Hey, Space Dog. Thanks for coming back again. Now, none of this is quite right yet. It's going to need plenty of adjustment. Just starting to block in what we need. I thought last week we used splines to pretty good effect, so I'll try a few of those out here as well. It's fun to actually kind of mess with the thickness, have some nice variation therein. Gives us some nice movement. Add a little lighting. Oh, that was unexpected. Now, I think this is going to be a bit too much, but let's check it. Let's check it out and see what it does for us. Actually, you know, I'm kind of feeling that. Didn't affect the lighting as much as I thought it might. Probably because it's so dark. Let's turn up that luminance a bit. Oh, well, we don't have GI turned on. That's why. All right. Now let's go ahead and turn this dude back down a little bit. I think 50 will be plenty. Now, in a way, I guess I'm trying to make these forms feel a bit like water. Flowing, undulating, rounded. Thanks, Space Dog. Yeah, lighting can make a big difference. I'm using some of these forms to kind of cast some shadows on these fish. If you think about fish swimming in a pond, kind of hiding under leaves and sticks and cruising around, you might find them sort of hidden under some shadows. They might even prefer to hide in places like that. Now, these shadows aren't casting exactly like I anticipated. Certainly not like what we're seeing here. I think that's because of a few things, actually. Turn the shadow density up on our area light. Let's give it some blueness too. That'll help. And also turn down brightness here on our sky object. And I think what we should also do is turn down the luminance on the fish just a hair. Let's try that again. So we get just a bit more shadow. This might be a bit much, but I do like working with odd numbers. Someone's at the doorbell. Hold on a sec. Right, sorry about that. Quick visitor at the door. Whoops. Yeah, Nathan. Thanks for tuning in, for the kind words. Kind of in the middle process here. I've got the concept down. I'm closing in on what the final composition is going to be. And now it's just a matter of tweaking lots of little elements to get everything, meshing and living together nicely. How's it rendering so fast, though? I don't know. I just have fairly simple settings. I have my quality turned down on my GI. Simple lighting setup. No reflections, which really helps. I'm just kind of experimenting with some colors here. I don't know. Now let's add to the render time by adding subsurface scattering to these fishies. Yeah, maybe I should make the fish slightly shiny too. Let's see how that goes. Let's just test it. Let's also see what it does for our render times. Sure, it's going to add to them. Another reason the render times are so low is because I've only got it set to 720 by 720. It's a fairly small test rendering size. See now, look at that. We're still in our pre-passes and it's already a longer rendering than the previous one. That is okay. I'm going to let that go and just keep adding elements to the composition here. Not loving that. Whoa there, partner. let's see, yeah, it added almost a minute to the render times. Oof, I'm not sure what to think. I think I'm going to turn the reflection way down. The subsurface scattering up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a thin texture. Whoops. Let's name these because they're so similar. I. And with this, here we go, Kiss of Death, long ass renderings. Let's add some transparency to this. And I always forget to do this. I nearly forgot again, but we have to actually go in and apply the new material, right? Right. All right. All right, kind of cool. I like that transparency. It's gonna add a lot. It's gonna add a lot to rendering times, but it actually looks really, really cool. I think we can go a little bit less transparent than that. Whoops. Thanks, Farad. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the kind words. So those of you just tuning in, I might as well reiterate the question of the week for episode 177. And the question really is, do you prefer to see quality or quantity from an artist? I struggle with this myself. Some artists I follow who I really, really enjoy are constantly putting out work. And it seems like that work, and no knock on them, but it seems like that work is maybe not the highest, the highest embodiment of what they're able to put out there. Like, you know, some of it, let's say it's like 75 or 80% done, and they put out just like a large volume of work that maybe didn't take them a super long time. And then there's other artists who only post like, once a month or a handful of times a year, and their stuff looks really polished and well considered, and you got to assume that, they're only publishing one out of every 8 or 10 pieces. So it's kind of an interesting thing that I've thought about and can see sort of the argument in both ways, especially sort of in the Instagram and social media age. It's hard to sort of keep people's attention. And a lot of times you'll get sort of unfollows, or you'll just sort of fall out of the collective memory of the artistic world on social media. And I think there is a pressure to just produce more and more. And I think some artists sort of, they have an advantage. It's just they work in a medium, or they have a workflow that just allows them to produce work quicker, which can be an advantage. So quality. Okay, Nathan thinks quality. One guy took 1 year to make the video in 2015. Till now, no video has come close. Huh, okay. So you don't mind waiting. Because I can see the argument that some people, they like the work that an artist produces. I'm not saying that it's crappy work. Let's say it's, of sufficient quality, but just not like the best thing that they've ever created. Or, some artists post their sketches. Let's think about it that way. Some artists post like most of their sketches, and they don't mind showing stuff that has flaws and isn't perfectly polished. Another artist just won't put anything out unless it's 100% polished and done. And I can see the argument in both directions. Now I'm lucky because I work fairly quickly, but I think sometimes I could be a little bit more of a careful editor. Actually, chatting through this reminds me of a quote that I heard last year that I jotted down in a notebook that said, gosh, I wish I could remember who said it. But the gist was basically, I strive to be a far less careful artist and a far more brutal editor. So like the idea being, don't be afraid to create. Just make lots of stuff, and some of it's sloppy, and if some of it isn't working, then that's fine. But that doesn't mean you have to show it to anybody, right? So you can be a careless artist and a careful editor. I think those two things can work in conjunction with one another. And I think, to be honest, this year, I think I'm going to post probably a little bit less, and I'm going to try to make the stuff that I post of a slightly higher quality. I'm going to keep up with the practice, of course. Hopefully I can keep that stuff at a really high quality, but, with the client work that I've got on tap for this year so far, and other things that are going on, I don't know if I'm going to be able to post with the frequency that I'd like to. So maybe once a week or so. And maybe even if I make an episode of the practice that I'm not super, super loving, maybe I will just kind of keep that to the YouTube audience and then just not post it on Instagram or elsewhere, Who knows? Right, yeah. Another quote that I really like is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You don't want to be afraid of making stuff, and you don't want to let a slight imperfection keep you from, sharing something that's quite good. And not everything's going to be your best piece. And there's also something to be said for just putting the work out there and letting people judge it. When I first started posting, I was a lot more concerned about what people thought of my work. And now, I realize I can't please everyone. And you develop a little bit of a thick skin and some calluses, and maybe you care a little bit less. I'm going to try this like simple capsule in here, wondering if maybe some simple linear elements will contrast nicely with all this curving and rounding we have. And I know this isn't super linear, it's got kind of rounded edges, but let's see how we do. It does have a straight line across the top and bottom. Let's even try and see what it looks like with the sky material on it. Just get kind of a flat shape. Might not even be visible when it's against the background, actually. This might produce some interesting sort of negative space. Let's try it out. Let's see what we get. We do have some really nice overlapping with some of these shapes. The way this guy kind of overlaps there, and this is going under the belly. There's some good stuff happening. I really like how this little background dude is sort of half in the shadows and half out. I kind of want to create more of a shadowed look. Maybe this dude needs some more shadows on him. I don't think I like what that's doing for the composition, but I want the shadow. So I'm just going to put a compositing tag on it and turn off, let's see, scene by camera. Whoop. I should still cast shadows. Farad, do I have some light-based tutorials? I mean, I deal with lighting in all of the videos that I do. Pretty much all of them, just because I create a final rendering, but I'm not sure if I have any videos where I just sit and go over lighting explicitly for any length of time. And I think I don't need these capsules. I think they're just a little bit too much. So I think what I'm probably going to do is get pretty close to kicking out a final rendering here. And then I'll probably bring it over into Photoshop, and similar to last week, I will do some drawing in Photoshop on top of these guys. Add some more texture and some kind of hand-drawn elements. Yeah, definitely did not need those additional capsule shapes. getting some weirdness here where that sphere is interacting with these shapes that it overlaps. So let's see. Let's find it. It's this dude, yeah. I'm going to turn off Seen by AO, so I don't want that. I don't want reflection or refraction or transparency either. Just want it to really cast shadows. Make it a little bigger here too. Right, behave yourself. Oh, and your other question, Fraud, where do I get inspiration? Everywhere. I'm constantly looking at artwork. I'm constantly drawing and seeking inspiration and noodling around with new ideas. A lot of time from nature as well. I love spending time outside. I love hiking and camping and trail running. There's a lot of beauty to be found just even in your backyard, in a neighbor's garden, all over the place. So at times I almost struggle with what to do with all the inspiration. There's so much good stuff, and there's so many little threads that you could follow in a million different directions. So sometimes it's almost hard to know where to stop and what to pick up on and what's going to influence your work in a good way and not be too contrived or too close to the inspiration, right? Because you want to draw inspiration, but you don't want to copy necessarily. You want to apply your own voice to it. So everywhere, nowhere. I'd say a big one is nature, though, actually. I'd say other artists that I find on the internet and nature are probably my biggest inspirations. And also, the process. There's something about working in 3D where you discover new ways of building things, new deformers and how they work. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can discover that may influence the way you make things, may inspire you to create a different kind of piece. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm liking this shadowing too on this fish here. That's kind of what I was after. Also think I'm going to take this guy a little lower. I think this guy probably needs a shadow too. That's nice, the way this purple is bouncing here. Which makes me think maybe I'll turn up the gamma just a hair, which will allow everything to bounce along a little further. Light to penetrate a little deeper into some of these objects. So yeah, Tumblr and Instagram are great places to find other artists. Yeah, you can see how the lighting is going a little deeper into these fish. The fish are a little bit brighter. I think that gamma helped out there. Aw, thanks, Farad. No worries. Where you viewing from, Farad? All right, I think we're getting close. Oh, all the way from Azerbaijan. Cool. Well, appreciate the support. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're hanging out and looking at the practice to learn a little bit about cinema. Hopefully you get something useful from it each week. So the color range is actually quite similar to what we put together last week. But that's cool. Yeah, that's working a little better for me, I think. I think I need one more sphere. One more sphere over here. Yep. All right, I'm gonna go for it, I think. It's time to call this one. So, all right, off we go. Let's render this thing. Cool. I'm going to give you a close-up for the moment. I'll be back in 1 sec. All right, progress. Hey Tirta Yasa, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Do I ever create and try shader tune? I've played with it a little bit, but I'm not great with it, to be honest. It can be really useful, but it's not something I've got a ton of experience with. And Giles theme, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. I think you're pretty sick. While that's finishing up, let's, whoops, not After Effects. Let's pop open Photoshop. Let's force quit that After Effects. I'm going to grab my tablet because I'm going to draw on these fishies. All right, nearly there. All right. It's an interesting question, Tirta. It's something I've thought about before. It's definitely something that some artists do. And I'm not necessarily against it, but I don't know. I mean, I have people hire me to create stuff for them, but I'm not sure that I want my sort of style and voice to be out there for any old 3D artist to use, because that'll sort of devalue, I think, that what I bring to the table. Maybe not, but it's also a lot. It's a lot more work than you'd think to upload all that stuff, and you gotta like create a shop, and that can be more work than might be needed. And I do listen to music. I'm like basically always listening to music and podcasts while I work, except for when I'm streaming on YouTube, because if I want to monetize these videos, then I cannot have other artists' content in them. unfortunately. Sometimes what I'll do is listen to music really, really quietly in the background uh, at such a level where the folks tuning in can't really even hear it. I know there are like royalty-free music tracks that I could download, but usually they're not so great. Hmm. Hmm. Now, drawing on top of this, I think, can really help create some of those interesting overlapping effects, which, in my mind, add a lot of interest to a piece. We're also getting some contrast between kind of these thicker blobby shapes and then these very thin sort of line work looking pieces. But we have to be careful not to overdo it. There's the very real chance that you overdo effects like these. So we got to be a little bit judicious. Whoops. There we go. All right, guys. I think there's the real potential to push this a little too far and to start overworking it. I think we've got a good amount of richness. I really like the movement and the really organic, sort of underwater feel that we've got going on with these backgrounds. The fish came together really quickly, and I'm pleased with how they turned out. There is really kind of a nice depth and a nice kind of tactile juicy sort of feel to this piece. So I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any ideas about the question of the week, please don't hesitate to drop a comment in the section below. If you like what you saw, please don't hesitate to share with a pal. If you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm doing, hit me up at DLGNCE on Instagram and other social medias. The website is diligence.studio, where you can find my current portfolio and get in touch via email if you like. Always enjoy, pushing myself to come up with something on the fly and share a little bit of info and inspiration with the rest of you guys. So hopefully this helps inspire you to get after it and make some work of your own. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and until next week, this is Stuart saying goodbye. Later.